Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 25th episode of A QISSAA with Ishika, quintessential and inspiring stories of South Asian artists, funded by the California Arts Council Individual Artist Fellow Grant. My name is Ishika Muchal, and I'm coming to you from the unceded and ancestral lands of the Gabrielino Tongva people and the Fernandino Tatavian people, known as Los Angeles, California. I am so beyond excited to introduce to you my guest today, voice and screen actor and singer Zehra Fazal. A versatile actor, she has voiced many characters on series for Disney Television Animation, Nickelodeon, Warner Brothers, Dreamworks, Netflix, and Cartoon Network. Her voice has likely entered your world through characters in series and video games, including Young Justice Outsiders, Voltron, Legendary Defender, Bojack Horseman, She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, Big Hero 6, the series, Lost in Space, Borderlands 3, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Destiny 2, and League of Legends, among many, many others. On camera, Zehra has appeared in How to Get Away with Murder, Magnum PI, and Lucifer, and she is a talented singer who has performed at various cabarets and concerts. She is also a recipient of two Society of Voice Arts and Science (SOVAS) awards for her promo work as the voice of the Women's World Cup, an outstanding body of work overall. I am so excited and honored to welcome Zehra Fazal.
Hello! Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
This is so exciting. For anyone who does not know, Zehra and I met working on a table read in
Yes!
May.
Ishika was my daughter.
Yes, it was very fun. It was very fun, and I just so admire your work and like you have such a grand plethora of work out there, and I feel so honored to be
Oh,
talking
thank
to you
you
here.
so much. The feeling is so mutual. I feel so honored to be invited here. If I can talk about our host for a moment,
Yeah.
like, you're just such an inspiring young person, and it was so evident to me just by in talking with you a little bit, like how passionate you are, and like you are this next generation of upcoming artists. And I'm so excited for what you're going to bring to the world and our industry
Oh,
specifically.
thank you. It's all because of people like you that are like laying the groundwork for like the next generation of artists, especially like South Asian artists, to be able to
Yeah.
actually feel like we have a space of our own to work with and to be in. So,
Totally. It totally feels like everybody who's a little bit older, a little bit been in the industry a little bit longer,
yeah.
all we want is to make it easier for the
Yeah.
people who are coming up
Yeah.
under us. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, standing on the shoulders of so many people who came before.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Well, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your journey. What got you introduced to acting, and what made you want to pursue it as a career?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I'm the youngest of 4 girls,
Okay.
and so I grew up in a household that was always very lively. We played a lot of make-believe games, and I think being the youngest, I had to get really good at communicating and develop my verbal skills
Right.
very quickly if I wanted to have any chance of playing with my sisters who were older than me.
Mhm.
And so I think naturally, and our parents always encouraged us, "Oh, yeah, be in the school play, do speech and debate."
Right.
They, like, cultivated our creativity.
Yeah.
So when I really got the sense like, "Oh, performing, acting is something I could do for a living,"
Mhm.
it was around the time when I was in high school. I'd always been a fan of animation and cartoons,
Mhm.
and I drew, and I wanted to become an animator at one point.
Okay.
But it was around that time where I got various encouragement to, "Hey, you should check out voiceover. What
Hmm.
about being, the voice of characters in animation?" And I also got super involved in college in theater and, like, studying in Japan, like, Japanese theater. And
Right.
so by the time I kind of popped out into the world after college, I thought, "Okay, I wanna pursue a life in the performing arts,
Right.
whether it's theater, whether it's on camera, whether it's voiceover or a blend of it all." That's kind of how I
Yeah.
knew that I wanted to be a storyteller in the performing arts medium.
Right. You said studying in Japan?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, I went to Wellesley College just outside of Boston, and Wellesley, it's an all-women's school.
Mhm.
They are so encouraging of their students kind of crafting their own thesis and plans,
Mm,
and so I became really obsessed with this Japanese theater company that was an all-women theater company that
okay.
produces musicals,
Yeah,
called Takarazuka.
amazing.
So, I ended up getting an internship to study with them, spent about 9 months in Japan in a language school and also working in the theater,
Okay.
um, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
I love Japanese theater in general, and
Mhm.
so there's no better way to learn a language than to study the art that's coming out of that country.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a
Absolutely. Oh,
really
that's
cool experience.
incredible. Ah, I love study abroad opportunities and
Yes!
internship. So
It's
exciting.
so vital.
Absolutely. To just, like, integrate yourself into, like, a different culture. So important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
important not only for you as a human, but
right.
for you as an artist to
Absolutely.
be exposed to, gosh, what is humor in this culture?
Right.
What are common
Right.
practices in this culture versus and there's so much difference as you know, in
Yeah.
Eastern, speaking broadly, Eastern art
Right.
and Western art.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you decided to, like, eh, delve into, like, something that's not Eurocentric. That's really exciting.
Me too, yeah.
Mm.
I didn't plan it. I wish I could say, "Yes,
Right.
I consciously planned it," but I've
Yeah.
just always been fascinated
Yeah.
by Japanese culture and Japanese animation and theater, so
Right. Absolutely. So you got introduced to voiceover and theater. So how did that journey, like, into professional voiceover start for you? And what was that beginning
yeah.
part like?
Yeah, it was kinda twofold. So when I about 11 years ago,
Mhm.
I decided I was living in Washington, DC at the time doing
Okay.
regional theater,
Mhm.
and I always knew I don't wanna end up here, I really wanna try my hand at a bigger market, namely LA,
Mhm.
because LA is where all the animation is and
Right.
also where a lot of on-camera television is.
Of course.
Um, so I moved to LA, I made some basic demos
Mhm.
and I also had some contacts in the animation industry from when I was younger. I
Okay.
met folks who worked on, my favorite shows, and we
Right.
kinda kept in touch. So I kind of had a sense of, "Okay, if I go to LA, I have a little small network,"
Yeah.
and I th when I finally got here, I thought, "I think I can get the voiceover side of my career up and running faster
Mhm.
than on camera," because
Right.
it just seems like something that would just be more opportunities than
Sure.
on-camera auditions, which are kind of few and far between,
Right.
especially for, at that point, a South Asian person.
Mhm.
This is back in 2012.
Right.
Um, and so I really started focusing on voiceover. I called local studios to see if there was a place I could send my demos to.
Mhm.
The second place I call brought me into audition for something, and so I
Amazing.
started working, I started
Yeah.
meeting people, and then eventually about a year into it, I got my first agent, and
Mhm.
then I started auditioning for bigger projects and
Mhm.
started booking commercials, and it wasn't until, 2017, that summer was a pivotal turning point for me
Okay.
because I booked 3 shows in a row of series regular or, like, heavily recurring
Right.
characters in animated shows,
Mhm.
and so once that happened, it's like the snowball rolling down the hill, and
Right.
I've thankfully never I've never had a lack of work since then. I've just
That's really nice. Yeah.
been working on a lot of cool, primarily animation, video games, and commercials.
Yeah, and I feel like that's so rare in this industry, so I'm so glad that has
You
worked.
know,
Yeah.
it is rare, but at the same time, I think voiceover has this, sort of mystique around it, like, "Oh, only a
Mm.
few people do it, and it's really hard to break in." It may be hard to break in, but there's always room for talented folks,
Right.
always room for good actors, so it's not impossible,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and what does a typical day on a voiceover set look like, if there is such a thing as a typical day?
Yeah, it really depends on the project. So, typically, what happens for most cartoons,
Mhm.
um, you are booked in a 4-hour block.
Mhm.
So it's either the 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. shift or the 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. shift.
Right.
They might bring you in for all 4 hours
Mhm.
or only 15 minutes. So depending on how much material you have in your script.
Right.
What's something that's interesting is regardless of how much time they book you for, the pay rate is the same.
Yeah.
And you can have 1 line and get paid the same as if you were the star of the series and had 30
Right.
lines in an episode.
Love
So
that.
it's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
It can be good and bad,
Yeah,
um,
of course.
but like, it's, so there's a lot of flexibility.
Mhm.
Week to week, you don't always know what the next week is going to look like.
Right.
This past week for me was busy, I had 4 bookings,
Mhm.
but there are other weeks that go by and it's just auditions and crickets.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
I was just having this conversation actually with a friend.
Mhm.
The key, I think, is flexibility in your calendar and your schedule,
Right.
knowing that each week is gonna look a little different,
Mhm.
and to as things come up, make yourself as available and ready to mentally pivot.
Mhm.
So flexibility of schedule and of mind.
Right, right. Yeah, you have to be so fluid to just, like, not know whether you're gonna be at work in the next 2, 3 days or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something about this industry that is so specific to, like,
Mhm.
entertainment is that not knowing of, like, what your schedule is gonna look like, but it's also exciting and spontaneous, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's never boring,
Right,
and
exactly.
I the other thing I'll say is, like, if you're a person who thrives, I mean, most of us do,
Mhm.
thrive on some sort of routine to keep us
Right.
grounded, you have to find something other than work to
Mhm.
create that sense of routine for yourself.
Mhm.
Whether it's
Absolutely.
a meditation, a religious practice, a physical routine, working out,
Right.
a family thing, like, whatever it is to give your life structure.
Yeah.
But, oh, I didn't answer your question of when you actually, like, go into the set, what is it
Mhm.
like?
Yeah.
So, for instance, um, I'm recording a Disney show at the moment,
Mhm.
and it's not on the Disney lot, but it's on a studio that works with Disney. So I'll go to the recording studio, I'll go in. Sometimes the voice director is there in person,
Right.
but a lot of the time since the pandemic, they're on Zoom.
Mhm.
So it's you and the engineer,
Right.
and, usually these days, unfortunately, you're not working with your other actors in a scene. Everyone is kind of recorded on their own and it's all put together
Right.
after the fact. Back, even 5, 6 years ago, there were still a lot of group records,
Right.
which is the best because it's like
Yeah.
a live play together.
Exactly.
Um, but now it can be a little lonely, but that's why the voice director is so key
Mhm.
to keeping everybody in the same world.
Right, right, providing the context behind
Yeah,
what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. Um, I feel like acting on camera is something that many people in who are listening might be, like, more
Mm,
familiar with, but
mhm.
voiceover is such like you're saying, there's, like, a mystique behind it. So, is there anything about voiceover that you think maybe someone should know that they may not know about that's unique to that field?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. Um, I'll say the thing I hear the most often is, "Oh, you have a great voice. No wonder you do voiceover." Great voices having a pretty voice helps, for sure,
Sure.
but there's plenty of people with pretty voices that can't get jobs.
Mm.
You have to be a good actor.
Mhm.
You have to focus on the acting, the emotion, the storytelling first,
Mhm.
and put the thought about the voice, that's really kind of the technical icing on top.
Right.
Um And it depends on what you wanna do within voiceover. Some things require more acting skills than others.
Sure.
But I'd say to people, especially people with an on-camera background,
Mhm.
you have to put as much thought, care, and training into voiceover as you do your on-camera part of your career. So that
Mm.
means investing in your demos like you would
Right.
invest in your headshots, investing in, getting a few classes in, where you're actually going into a booth and using a
Sure.
mic and getting direction. Um, and treating your scripts and treating your auditions as much thought and consideration about the character and the story as you would for your on-camera work.
Right.
You're still doing everything, it's just it's not being caught on camera.
Right, of course, and, like, also maintaining the health of your voice because that's, like, your primary instrument,
Yes.
which is
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, getting really familiar with your you-isms, you know?
yeah.
Like, oh
Oh,
gosh, when I was first starting out, I did audiobooks, and
right,
audiobooks, you're, like, there and you're talking for hours, and
right.
I was editing my own books at the time, my own recordings,
Mhm.
and so I started to learn, like, "Oh, I take a lot of breath whenever I do this," or
Hmm.
"My breaths are it sounds like I'm
Yeah.
gasping," or, "Oh, I noticed with this particular word, like opportunity or monitor, I tend to
Mhm.
slur it a little bit.
Hmm.
Interesting when the N sound." So you start
Right.
to notice all these
Yeah.
things about your
Yeah.
instrument
Right.
that, come with just familiarity of recording yourself and listening back over and
Mhm.
over and over. Um, and you really then get to know, "Oh, okay, so I work on my breath control now because I
Mhm.
hear something I wanna adjust," or I know that when I approach a word that I tend to stumble over, I have to
Mhm.
really, take my time or have a different intention going into it, so I'm not thinking about the word.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
more in the flow of acting rather than
Yeah.
thinking, "Monitor, how do I say monitor?"
Right, definitely. Oh my god, yeah, every time I say the word community, I, for some
Mm,
reason, freak out. So, yeah, just not thinking about it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you mentioned audiobooks, and there's, so many different genres within voiceover, like, when you're creating your demo reel, for example, like, audiobooks, video game, animation, education, commercial, playback singing.
Oh my
What
gosh.
are the areas that you have worked in, and, how are they each different and similar?
Yeah. Um, so VO commercials for
Mhm.
TV and radio is a
Okay.
big one. Animation, and that's American animation as opposed to dubbing,
Right.
animation that comes in from overseas. It's called prelay work because 'cause you're laying down the vocals.
Gotcha.
Um, Video games.
Mhm.
I have dabbled in promo in the past, which is like, "Tonight on Fox, check
Right.
out blah, 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 8 PM."
Right.
Like, um I have done a lot of industrial videos, whether it's, like, medical industrial, explaining how
Mm.
a drug works
Right.
or explaining how a car works, like,
Mm.
sort of I'm the friendly tutorial voice, and I'll walk you
Right.
through it.
Oh,
Um
I can literally hear it. That's amazing.
But I have to say, the most kind of off the wall work I've ever done was I used to be the voice of this grocery store, so I did all their commercials, but I also did the in-store announcements, like, "Farmer John's pork spare ribs now available on aisle 3. See your
Yeah.
sales associate for details."
Oh
Like
my god, that's amazing. Did you ever go into those grocery stores and, like, hear yourself and get freaked out?
No, no, I never got the chance, and sadly, that grocery store is now out of business,
Oh,
but
no.
they made some poor decisions. Not related to the voiceover talent.
Right. Right. Of course, their one good decision was hiring you. Yeah.
But yeah, and I've done a little audiobook work.
Right.
Um, yeah, so I kinda dabble all over. I'd say the area of voiceover I don't really do too much of is narration.
Okay.
Um, being like a doc on a documentary,
Sure.
discovery show.
Right.
Um, and I don't really do a ton of dubbing. I do something called
Mhm.
ADR loop group
Right.
where you're kind of filling out the world of voices for, TV and film.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
something important I think is to have multiple pots on different burners because
Mhm.
inevitably one area is gonna slow down and then it's in your best interest. Okay, well, an animation is slow. Oh, commercials are really busy. Okay,
Mm.
commercials are kind of low. Oh, but there's a lot of video game stuff going on. So it's like everything
Yeah.
somehow stays in balance
Yeah.
with enough volume.
Yeah. We at our in our last year of at CalArts, we had a voiceover class, and we
Oh,
did, like, we touched on a bit of ADR and looping, and can
uh
you just explain more about that?
yes. So, for folks who aren't familiar with
The
how
lingo.
this works in
Yeah.
yeah, in production. When you watch a movie and you see a scene in a restaurant, you hear people murmuring in the background of the restaurant. Maybe you hear specifics like a waiter saying off screen, "Here's your check." Um, all those things are not usually captured when they're filming
Mhm.
the movie. Those things are put in later by a group of voice actors and, somebody called a post-production supervisor who
Mhm.
records all that dialogue and creates the soundscape. So that's called looping. I think
Mm.
it has to do with, like, looping tape back in the
Right.
old days when everything
Yeah.
was analog, before either of our times. Um, and ADR, I think it's automated dialogue replacement?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like when you need to on set, let's say, Charlize Theron, they didn't get her audio clean, there was, like, a bump in the background or an
Mhm.
airplane was going over, and the budget for the movie, they don't have the money to hire her back for a day to record that line.
Right.
They might hire somebody, a voice actor who
Mhm.
can do Charlize Theron, who can drop in and, like, do that line,
Mhm.
for a much more affordable rate for production.
Yeah, because then you're also not taking time, like, on set to just keep on doing takes, because then you're
Yeah.
also spending production money.
Right,
But
right. Now sometimes the actor the like, because 'cause I've had to ADR myself before,
Right,
so the actor on screen so the actor on screen, sometimes they are able to come in and
right.
fill in, and of course that's preferable,
Sure.
but I'm really thankful for voice match ADR work when it comes up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's why, like, impressions are so useful to just know who you sound like.
Yeah, yeah, to know totally. Like, I have a friend, who Kif Vandenheuvel, who's, like, very gifted at, uh, voice matching,
Mm,
and, you kind of can identify who you can match with your basic natural timbre and tone,
mm,
and then there's little things that you can do to tweak it, like certain ways of speech.
okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not an expert on it by any means, but it's such a fascinating area of, like,
Yeah.
subtle how do you get into another actor's voice print and mindset when you're
Right.
matching picture? It's very difficult technical work.
Right. Because you can sound like them, but can you really, like, sound like them?
Right.
Not just by, like, your vocal tone, but by, like, by everything else.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, who have been some of your favorite collaborators or favorite projects that you've worked on?
Oh my gosh. Um, oh, there's so many. One that really springs to mind is I was a character on the new She-Ra and the Princesses of Power done by
Mhm.
Dreamworks. It's out on Netflix,
Okay.
and, I play a character who was, in the story, the former She-Ra who
Mhm.
sacrificed herself for the good of the future, but who comes back to give advice to the new She-Ra. And that role is really special to me because
Mhm.
all the folks who worked on that show were so warm. It was one of, the few experiences where I've had where I've walked into a room and everyone in the room, the writer, the director, the showrunner at the time, like, were all, women or feminine presenting.
Okay.
And just to create something that, is primarily directed for girls,
Right.
made by mostly women,
Right.
it was really powerful, that kind of
Yeah.
feminine storytelling energy, and it's
Yeah.
kind of rare.
Oh, yeah.
It's becoming more thankfully, there's more and more stuff coming out for
Mhm.
everyone. But that was really special, and that character, there's a big kind of fan following of that show and my
Mhm.
character specifically, so that's been so nice to engage with young
Yeah.
people. I also really loved working with one of my early mentors, a longtime mentor and friend, Greg Wiseman. He
Mhm.
created the show Gargoyles. He created Young Justice with
Mhm.
Brandon Vietti. Um, the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon from the aughts. So he's been a longtime mentor of mine, and we got to work together on Young Justice. He brought me on to play several
Mhm.
characters there. So that was a true moment of like, oh, the person I'm a fan of as a kid,
Yeah.
I get to now work with
Oh,
and
yeah.
join the storytelling worlds that inspired me when I was a child.
Right. Such a
Um,
full circle moment.
yeah.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I wanna go back and highlight something you said about, like, being in a room with all women. I think that's something that's so undervalued and so, like,
Mm,
underrated, that feeling of just, like, being in a space of, like, all women or all people of color, that
yeah.
I know that, like, every time I've had that opportunity, it's just always felt so so comfortable, like, you can, like, let down your guard, and you can just, like, be,
Mhm.
and somehow you don't have to, like, explain yourself.
Yes, there's so much that doesn't need to be said because
Yeah,
it's already understood, it's the baseline.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, that made me happy. So I just
Yay.
wanted to highlight that. Yeah. Um, so going back into, like, the earlier part of your journey,
Mm.
what were some of the challenges that you had starting out, and how did you overcome them? Or even now currently?
Yeah. Let me speak to, like, the on-camera stuff first.
Okay.
So my background is I spent 6 years based in Washington, DC doing theater up and
Mhm,
down the East Coast, and it was great. It was a great training ground for me. I never got, an MFA
mhm,
or formal acting training until I moved to LA, and I was in acting classes for a while here. But
sure.
that initial, 6 years of theater, working in every kind of genre,
Yeah,
was sort of my training.
of course.
I think something whenever you're in a visual medium, this, of course, cannot be discounted. You look like a type, or you
Right.
you look like you play certain characters.
Mhm,
And I think for that time period, this was in, the 2010s, or
mhm,
late aughts, 2010s,
mhm.
teens, I guess. I don't know
Yeah.
how to talk about things in the 21st century.
Time doesn't exist, it's okay.
Um, I felt a sense of exclusion from the main characters,
Hmm,
um, that wasn't necessarily based on talent, if that makes sense.
hmm, yeah,
Just, "Oh, I don't look the part."
right.
Uh, and on camera too, I've discovered I read for a lot of things, but the things
Mhm.
I've tended to book in the past are news reporters, doctors, or victimized woman in an undisclosed Middle Eastern country.
Stop.
And it's like, "Oh, okay,
Oh,
this is how I'm
no.
being perceived and seen," but
Yeah,
yet, when I do my animation and video game work, I'm the lead character. I'm the heart
right,
of the story. I
right.
am the audience proxy for their emotions as we go through this hero's journey.
Mhm,
Why can't I translate that work that I do into visual medium?
right.
Um, and, I think things it's just such a different beast. So, I try not to for a while, I was really frustrated by it.
Right. And it is because what you're saying is that, like, you're getting cast based on your talent, based on your voice and your
Mhm.
acting in
Right,
voiceover for these leading roles,
right.
but just because, like, your appearance doesn't match the typical perception of what a lead should look like,
Mhm.
you're not getting cast in those roles, or, like, you're not getting considered really for those roles where
Yeah.
you're getting considered for the exact same roles based on your talent and your voice for
Right.
something else. It's just,
Yeah,
like, this perception.
that's very well put, and I think
Yeah.
that's very succinctly the source of the frustration. It's
Right.
like, why working? Why not working?"
Right.
Confused.
Right.
And, some of that is the industry,
Mhm.
some of that is on me, and,
Mhm.
some of that is when they're casting a show, they're looking at everybody. I think it's harder when you're a taller girl sometimes,
Mhm.
but I'm not using any of these as excuses for why it hasn't happened yet, but they're
Yeah.
points of data that I have to consider.
Of course, of course.
And I think that's the thing. When things get challenging, I think all of us have a tendency to turn it completely inwards and be like,
Mm.
I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough.
Mm.
Or to go the other direction and be like, everybody sucks. They don't
Yeah.
understand. I'm the victim. They're victimizing me. And
Right.
it's like, well, what I've learned for me is neither of those things really serve me. It's not
Hmm.
doesn't serve me to beat myself up, and it doesn't serve me to hate the thing I'm trying to be a part of.
Right.
So I think, okay, I'm gonna be curious about the data I have,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna be thankful for the work I do have, the
Mhm.
characters I do get to create, and I get to know that every acting thing I do, whether it's a commercial voiceover, whether it's a part in a film, whatever acting thing I do, I know that it's building my acting muscle so that the next time I get the opportunity to audition for something
Right.
that's really awesome,
Mhm.
I'm I'm gonna be a little bit better at it than I
Mm,
was the week before, the month before, the year before.
yeah.
Like, I could just focus on a better becoming better at living truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Oh, I love that. That's so I don't wholesome is not the right word, but that I'm gonna say that's so wholesome and, like, it just feels like the right mindset to have in what can be such a daunting field of work.
Well, it's the only mindset that gives you any kind of control, 'cause so much of
Mm,
it's out of your control, right?
I
Even what
know.
I told you, "Oh, I'm tall. Oh, I'm not white. These are reasons they don't think about me." I don't actually know the reasons. There's
Right.
so much information we don't get about casting.
Yeah.
Something is I remember I had a producer call back for the lead in a sitcom once.
Mhm.
I was so excited.
Yeah.
They had already offered it to a celebrity, and they were just having auditions to, like, put pressure on the celebrity to take it. And it was like, "Why? Why do you do this?"
That's so frustrating. Just tell the actors so they're not like
Right. Thinking, "Oh, wow, I'm in the running for this." And
Right.
so, it's like I had a point by bringing that up. Oh, there's so much out of your control, right? You can't
Right.
control that. And you can't control that the industry, it's hard to break into. It's hard to get into that kind of exclusive group of people who get
Yeah.
offers. But it's not same thing I said about voiceover. There's always room for talent. And all
Mhm.
you can work on is your talent. That's the only thing you can control.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wanna go back. You said, this hit me hard, that, like, the victimized Middle Eastern woman, and,
Oh.
I love to ask the artists, especially, like, performing artists, how has, like, stereotyping and representation played a role in your journey? Like, I know you've talked about in access, like a barred access to certain roles, but, how have you dealt with, like, being cast into certain roles that you don't
Yeah.
necessarily feel comfortable or aligned with playing?
It comes up for me when so I'm Muslim.
Mhm.
My parents are from Pakistan and India. They were Indian Muslims who, when the partition happened, their families were forced to move to Pakistan, so they grew up in Pakistan.
Okay.
And, so I often get cast as Muslim characters,
Right.
which is awesome, right?
Mhm.
Increasing Muslim representation on TV of positive things, that's
Right.
awesome. However, they always have a hijab,
Mm,
and I've never worn the hijab. Nobody in my family wears the hijab. There's lots
yeah,
of flavors of Islam, and our flavor is not that one.
right.
And it's very interesting going on a set and playing a Muslim character and constantly wearing the hijab when it's like, okay, it's one aspect of how you can be Muslim,
Sure.
and I'm grateful for the representation at all. But if you're really trying to cast authentically, this isn't
Mm,
authentic to me. And then this doesn't happen so much anymore, but there's the expectation that, oh, you know how to tie the hijab, right? Because you're Muslim. It's like,
no.
no, I've never worn one in my life. You
Yeah.
should have your wardrobe research this.
Right.
And so it's and then I had a really interesting experience. I tell this story because it's an example of everybody is trying so hard to
Mhm,
get it right and to not offend anybody. Like, there's a
mhm.
lot of good intent that goes into a lot of what we do, but it doesn't always translate.
Sure.
So, specifically with on camera, I feel like animation's a little bit more ahead of the curve,
Mhm.
in terms of representation, diversity, and authenticity.
Right.
But, like, a few years ago, I was on a show. I won't say the name of the show, but it's a network show,
Okay.
and I played a woman at a mosque wearing a hijab, and we were coming out of the mosque after prayers, and, the makeup department, because, your shoes are off at the mosque, and I had,
Right.
like, pantyhose, socks,
Uh-huh.
and the woman at the makeup department looked at my toenails were painted pink, and she was like, "Oh, I don't know if Muslim women would have painted toenails at the mosque."
Uh,
I'm like, "I've literally never heard of this in my life, but sure,
right.
you can remove my nail polish if you want." And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, it's just we've had, like, emails and emails with board members about this scene, so we really wanna get it right." And it's like, "Okay."
See, I wonder if any of those board members were actually Muslim, though.
Right, right.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I appreciate
Right.
the actor doesn't have to make the
Yeah.
decision. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not relied on as the sole Muslim source,
Yeah.
but at the same time, having a white makeup artist woman tell me I have to take off my pink toenails to go to portray a culture and religion that I am an active part of was just
Right.
like, "Okay, whatever, you're paying me, do whatever you want."
Yeah. That's
So, you get put in awkward positions,
sure.
and I think as you probably have experienced, hopefully not too much, sometimes when you're the only one of something in the room, it falls
Yeah.
on you to become the subject area expert.
Mhm.
When,
Mhm.
first of all, nothing is a monolith, right? You can only
Right.
present your perspective. And then
Mhm.
that's why there are all these, like, groups like the Muslim Public Affairs Council of Hollywood that does such a good job of, like, talking with writers and showrunners about,
Yeah.
"Well, this is what some Muslims do, and this is how others do it, and,
Right.
you could do this, and that's fine, and this might raise some heads," and it's having multiple people's input. That's what
Right.
diversity means. It's,
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
multiple multiple points of view
Mhm.
talking and you to get to some sort of collective truth.
Right.
So I find myself in those situations often,
Mhm.
um, on camera
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah. That's nice to know that we have those, like, those resources, even if they are sometimes untapped. It's like in theater, having, like, a dramaturg to make
Yes.
sure that you're being culturally sensitive and,
Yeah.
bringing, like, the correct cultural context, not just forcing the people in the show who are there to
Right.
portray a part and don't carry, like,
Right.
cultural history of more
Right.
than just their own identity. And what you were saying about, like, oh, I lost my train of thought, but, the fact that there are multiple ways of existing as an identity, you know?
Yes.
Like, my Indian could be so different from, like, an Indian 2 doors down,
Oh
and
my god.
both of them are valid, and it's just like this need for increasing the number of options we have for people to
Yeah.
feel seen, because right now we're competing for, like, 5 slots, and for everyone who is Indian, like, these 2,000,000 people to feel represented
Yes.
with 5 people, and that's impossible.
Yes. Yes, especially the South Asian subcontinent. It's one of the most
Yes.
diverse, culturally diverse,
Right.
ethnically diverse places, and in
Yeah.
America, it's all whittled down to a few things, like you
Right.
said.
Right.
And, like, to your point, it took me the longest time to remember and learn my ethnicity is not my type. If they call
Mm.
in the same 5 Indian women, South Asian women for a part, we're
Yeah.
all different types, man.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
we happen to all be the same ethnicity,
Right.
but it's like and it breeds the sense of competition between people who
Yeah.
ideally you should be friends and colleagues with, not
Absolutely.
competitors.
Right.
And then because of that scarcity, because there's only a couple slots, it's like, "Well, I have to be the brown person."
Right, and that's a horrible feeling to not have, like, that allyship.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so I'm so grateful, like, lately, I feel like this has been spoken about and it's being
right.
cultivated where, there's a lot of I have a lot of
Mhm.
brown colleagues who we
Mhm.
get excited when we see each other, and
Yeah.
it's like, "Oh, we're so much stronger together and
Mhm.
sharing information than we are
Yeah.
kind of icebergs on our own."
Right, right. Well, we've talked about a lot of things that we want to see or things that we would love to change. So if you had a magic wand per se, or if you were, like, in, like, a very high leadership position, what
Mm.
are some of the changes that you would love to see instituted, and how do you think that the industry can move forward in terms of diversifying media?
The first thing that comes to mind, just in light of, like, the strikes and everything we've been experiencing this
Mhm.
summer, I can't help but think the people who run the studios, a lot of them are, like, tech and finance people.
Mm.
They don't have necessarily a creative background. They don't
Mhm.
have an understanding of what it means to be, like, a fan of something
Right. Ooh.
or to
Yeah.
actually create something. Not
Yeah.
everybody, but a lot of them. They're good at business. Well, in
Sure.
theory, they're good at business. So I'm so curious what it would be like if I could wave my magic wand
Mhm.
to instill that sense of creative genius in the
Mm.
actual studio heads. Because some of the decisions I feel that are made Like, you need the balance of business and a love for what it is you're making, I think, to be an effective leader in this industry.
Right, absolutely.
So I think that's one kind of top-down change, and to that point, diversity really doesn't start with casting.
Yeah.
Diversity is top-down. It needs to be the
Mhm.
executive level. It needs to be the showrunners and the writers and the,
Yeah,
the people, production, producers. Like,
right.
that is just as, if not more important than by the time actors, we're the last on the thing.
Yeah,
We bear the brunt of judgment from public because 'cause we're the public
sure.
faces of a product, but, we have very little power.
Right. Yeah.
And we're really at the whim of the people above us. So, if the people above us have more diversity of, and this isn't just ethnicity, right? Diversity of perspective. Like,
Mhm.
get some mothers in there. Get
Mm.
some, older women,
Mhm.
people from other industries, but I think the common theme is that thirst and passion for creativity
Yeah.
and an understanding of how things are made and how that exchange with the public works.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Oh
might be
my
speaking
god.
way above my pay grade here, but I think
No,
that's
my god. This
that's
is
what
this
I'd
is
like.
what we need. This is what we need. I love that you said that to bring more mothers and older women because, like, imagine how differently women would be portrayed and how less they would be objectified
Yes.
when you had that.
Yes. Oh my god, I cried when I saw the first Wonder Woman movie.
Mm,
Because it was the first time I was seeing a strong superhero female, not through the male gaze, but through
right.
like, "Oh, I wanna be that strong." Like, it
Mhm.
felt so it's such a subtle shift, and
Right.
I didn't know why I was getting so emotional, but when I've thought about it, I'm like, "That's why, because 'cause I'm not used to seeing
Absolutely.
this in media."
Yeah. The whole world written by a female. Love it.
We love to see it.
Yeah, we really do. You talked a little bit about you mentioned the strike, so I wanna ask you,
Oh, yeah.
how has the strike impacted your work during this time? And
Yeah, yeah. So, on camera, it's been real slow. I've had, like, 1 major audition this year back in February, and that's
mm,
it. Um Nothing is in production. I've had a couple, like, small indie film that have the waiver, like,
sure,
micro budget agreement,
right.
um, but TV has been dead.
Mm,
Um, Thankfully, a lot of what I a lot of the animated series and video games I work on have been ongoing for a couple years,
right,
but even animation is slow because not a lot of shows are being greenlit into production because
of course.
everybody is kind of all the companies are just bracing themselves to see how big is the financial loss gonna be,
Right,
when are the
right.
strikes gonna resolve? So everything feels, in general, slower, but
Mm,
I'm very grateful that because I work in this specific voiceover pocket, it's not struck
mhm,
work. My commercial life has been going well.
mhm,
So I feel so grateful, but I also feel a little bit of survivor's guilt.
hmm,
Similarly how I felt during COVID, during the early part of the pandemic, voiceover was an industry in general that was able to pivot and work from home
right,
relatively seamlessly,
sure.
and, now similarly again, I feel like, oh, the rest of the industry has ground to another halt, but
Right,
the stuff I'm doing has still been able to kinda move forward, and I'm grateful for that, but I realize a lot of people there's so much suffering, not just of the actors and the writers, but
yeah,
everybody who works in production. They're just
right.
hosed, and, like, so many folks are leaving the industry. I'm really nervous for when we come back,
Hmm,
what the vibe is gonna be like and
right.
who will be there. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, that's largely
the
how I've
spirits.
been affected, but the other thing I'll say, um I coach voiceover, and so I have some students who've been trying to get representation with
Mhm,
agents,
yeah.
and I tell all of them, "Man, this year is not a good indicator of that."
Mm,
A lot of
mhm,
agencies are like, not taking anybody on their rosters.
right.
So, like, don't base if you're trying it out, you're like, "I'm giving myself a year, seeing what happens." Don't base it on this year.
Yeah.
Like, stick
Yeah,
give it another year or 2
yeah,
because things are weird right now.
absolutely. And thinking of, like, I feel the exact same thing because, I graduated in May. This strike
Ah,
happened right then,
yeah.
and I moved to Burbank because I was like, "Oh, we're gonna be so close to the studios," and now it just feels so weird, like, driving past these studios on the way to
Yeah.
work, and I'm like, I can't work with them," and I'm like, "I'll go and I'll attend this, I'll strike there,"
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just a weird feeling,
Yeah.
especially for people who are just starting out, for sure.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, just hang in there. It's kind of interesting though that in a way you're seeing how the sausage is made right away.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
you can really decide, "Okay, long haul, this might
right.
happen again.
Yeah, for sure.
Do I want this?" Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just, like, remembering what we're fighting for is so important in, like, contextualizing
Yeah.
this moment of time where we're not able to work,
Yeah.
hoping that, like, when we are able to work, it's better for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It does feel like a very pivotal moment with
Mhm.
AI being the huge
Right.
issue of
Yeah.
whether we have the viability to do this as a career anymore or not.
Right.
I can't believe I'm even
Exactly.
saying that because I don't even understand why people wouldn't want human expression, but
Mhm.
I there's a lot of things about this world I don't understand, so
Yeah, one of my favorite, signs that I had seen at the writers' strike earlier was,
Mm.
AI doesn't have generational trauma. How can you how can you write without that?
Oh my god, that's great, it's so
Yeah,
true.
yeah, but
True.
shifting it to a more future positive lens, what is some advice that you would offer for an aspiring actor or actress or someone specifically in the voiceover world or just, like,
Yeah.
as an actor in general?
My advice is always just try to be as good of an actor as you can. Train. Live performance experience is crucial, whether
Mm,
it's getting up in an acting class every week and doing a scene, whether
mm,
it's improv, whether it's if you're a stand-up comedian, but
right.
really something that involves analyzing story and moving through an arc, that's best.
Mm,
So, like, theater is fabulous. It's a
right.
great time to do theater right now
Yeah.
because while stuff is not filming, go audition for something, do a live show because
Right.
you learn so much with
Mhm,
an audience, and working with other people live in real time.
mhm.
So that's my advice, train, be a good actor. Um, if you live in LA and even not, oh my god, there's so many resources available now to everyone. You
Yeah.
could take a Zoom class with, like, one of the top VO teachers in the world from
Yeah.
anywhere in the world. Take advantage of the resources that are available to you, um, because the world is more open now than ever before.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'll say, and I this is advice I give myself even at this point, when things feel slow or you feel blocked creatively,
Mhm.
make your own work.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be something you necessarily will show people,
Hmm.
but if you get in the muscle of creation,
Right.
somehow the universe moves to meet that.
Yeah.
Um, and
Mm.
it's a great way to if you do make something that you produce and put up, whether it's like social media skits or something more advanced like a web series, you've made something, you have a calling card, you can
Yeah.
show people, you can really make a vehicle for yourself. I guess I did this years ago. I put together a couple one-woman shows that I
Mhm.
took around and toured at theater festivals, and that was hugely beneficial and educational.
Right.
Um, and so make your own work.
Yeah. I love that, what you said. I literally have that quote on my wall, like, "Once you make a decision, the whole universe conspires to make it happen."
Yes!
Yeah.
Yes, it's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. Putting that energy out. I got a question into the chat, advice for South Asian parents whose kids are into performing.
Oh my god, put them in science camp. No. I love this question, and it's one I'm curious about. I'm not a parent yet,
Mhm.
and I've often thought, "Oh my god, what if my child wants to go into the performing arts?" My partner is a musician, so
Right.
both of us have performing arts jobs.
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh." I think kids are really smart about what they're passionate about.
Mm.
So I think it's never a bad thing to
Right.
encourage kids to move in the direction of their passions and have the freedom to explore it and to know that you support that exploration.
Hmm.
I think that's key. because then they feel like they have the agency to decide, and it's not like a, "Oh, mom doesn't like this." It's,
Right.
"Oh, mom's gonna support me no matter what I do.
Mhm.
I love this," or, "That's fun, but I'd rather do this." Like,
Hmm.
I don't
Mhm.
think there's anything bad in supporting, within reason, your
Right.
kids'
Of course.
passions. I'll tell this story. When I was 12, 13 years old, I was super into drawing,
Mhm.
and I got these, like, water-soluble poster paints,
Mhm.
and I started painting on my wall, and then I wiped it off with a paper towel, and I was like, "Oh, okay, okay, it washes off." So I started painting on my bedroom wall, and I drew this fairy with this, like, magical hair, and my mom walked in on me, and I was like, "Mom, it's okay, I can wash it off, it's fine, I can take it off."
Yeah.
And she gasped, and she said, "Do more, do the whole wall, it's so beautiful."
Oh,
And that was the moment for me where I was like, "Oh, my mom is cool." And
no.
she sees this thing that I love, that I'm good at, and she's enthusiastically cheerleading me. I can do anything.
Right.
It was such a
Oh,
small thing, but that's where a lot of my confidence came from, knowing that
mhm.
my mom had my back in that way.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
balance it out with my dad, who also had my back, but was like, "Maybe get an MBA just so you have something to fall back on, like, be smart about it."
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
great advice, but
Right.
thankfully, I've not ever had to do that.
Right.
I've been able to make a great living in the arts.
No MBA.
Yeah. No. But man, that's a hard call. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know, because if my
Right.
own child was like, "I wanna do theater," I'd be like, okay, because you know how hard it is.
Yeah.
You wouldn't wish
Yeah.
it on anybody unless there's what's the common phrase? "Don't become an actor unless there's nothing else on earth you could do." It's
Exactly.
kinda true.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, the only people who become artists are the people who need to become artists. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. But it's so important to have, like, that balance of, like, understand how difficult it is, but also you have our support,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Because when you're in this world where you're constantly gonna be facing rejection, it is so important to have someone that believes in you no matter what,
Yeah.
because so often we're, like, our worst critic and we don't believe in ourselves. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's it's not for the mentally, you have to be really resilient.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing I'll say to that is I didn't move to LA till I was 27,
Mm.
and I think that was good
Yeah.
personally, because I already was kind of a formed person. I
Mm.
knew kind of
Mhm,
my
mhm.
values, my ideals, what
Right,
I would and wouldn't do. Like, so my personality was pretty set.
right,
When you're younger and going into the industry, like, we're talking child actors now, right? Like, I
right.
worry about that because it's just
Yeah.
a lot to put on a young developing person.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, so, you
Yeah.
know, I think there's value in studying lots of different things
Sure.
and not putting all your eggs in one basket too early, because
Yeah,
it's hard.
it is. It is. Yeah. Well, this show is called A QISSAA with Ishika, and QISSAA means episode. So, if there is one influential QISSAA from your life, I know we talked about your
Mm.
mom supporting you, but if there's another story that you have that really influenced your life as yourself or as an artist?
Oh my gosh. Mm. Gosh, this is so hard. Because there's so many things that come to mind, and I'm thinking
Yeah,
it kind of about, like, the totality
right.
of experience. Um,
Trust me, if someone asked me this question, I don't know what I would answer either.
okay, this
Okay.
is kind of when I moved to LA,
Mm,
um, in 2012,
mhm,
I loaded up all my earthly possessions in my Honda Civic, and I drove across the country by myself.
mhm,
And about a mile away from my final destination, my friend's house in Orange County,
mhm.
my car started overheating.
Oh, no.
I was able to get it into her parking lot,
Yeah,
and we took it to the shop the next day. It had a blown gasket. So all the money I had saved, which wasn't a lot, I didn't
yeah,
plan very well, went to fixing the gasket. So
Oh,
I had no money, no savings, credit card debt a little bit,
yeah.
and I was on my own in a new city
Yeah.
where my friend network on the East Coast was no longer there. I had good friends, a couple good friends, in LA, but
Right.
I had to start rebuilding my
Mm.
life, finding work,
Mhm.
finding, like, the culture shock of moving from the East Coast to the West Coast. It's like, "Oh my god, the grocery stores are different, and why are there
Right.
palm trees everywhere, and why is
Yeah.
it so goddamn sunny all the time?" Like,
Yeah.
it's it was like, it was kinda like it marked the end of my 20s adolescence, if that makes
Mm.
sense,
Yeah.
and while that time was so difficult, those first 2 to 3 years, I was so scrappy.
Mm.
That scrappiness made me the artist and professional I am today,
Mm.
almost 10 years later.
Right.
And while that period was hard and confusing and
Mhm.
oftentimes soul crushing and like, why did I do this? Why am I here?
Yeah.
What's going to become of me? It was in that unknown that reaching out with trust that I would find my way, but not knowing what that way would look like. That was where I think I was really, like, forged in that fire,
Sure.
and through that period of time, remembered and I learned, "Oh, no matter what happens, if I lose all my jobs tomorrow, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be okay because
Mm.
I know how to survive."
Yeah.
It was tough, but if I ever have to do it again, I will. I've
Yeah.
done it. I got this.
Yeah.
So, for people, young people of any age,
Mhm.
don't be afraid to start over and go through difficult times. Difficult times are
Mhm.
preparing you for whatever's next. And if you just
Yeah.
trust, if you hang in there, that that whatever's next is going to come and you're going to appreciate it so much
Yeah.
more because of that struggle.
Absolutely. I love the analogy of being forged in the fire. Oh, that sticks. That'll stick with me for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, embrace the challenge. Embrace it.
Yeah. Um, do you have any upcoming or current projects that you are allowed to share with us?
Yeah. So let's see. Um, I'm looking at this is the most terrible thing. I'm like, "What am I working on? Let me look at IMDb." So I'm in a couple of animated series that came out in the last month or 2.
Mhm.
For those of you with little children, the
Mhm.
Dewdrop Diaries just came out on Netflix. It's this adorable show about these little fairies that help children with their things in life. It's
Okay.
adorable. It's great for, like, preschool age kids. I'm in a series on Cartoon Network called My Adventures with Superman, which
Okay.
is a really cool telling of, like, Superman when he first starts working at the newspaper
Mm.
agency, and Lois and Jimmy Olsen. It's about their friendship, and
Yeah.
it's really cute. So I play, a supervillain in that. I play
Okay.
Livewire,
Amazing.
on Cartoon Network. And then, I, uh I'm in a movie called Mortal Kombat Legends Cage Match, which is an animated Mortal Kombat film set, like, in the '80s, Patrick Nagel drawing style. It's really
Okay.
stylized and funny, and so that just came out. Um, yeah, so that's kind
Yeah.
of what's come out recently for me.
Very
And shout
cool.
out to, for any of you out there who are into tabletop role-playing games, which is a whole genre that I just kind of learned about and got involved in. I'm in a show with Critical Role called Candela Obscura
Okay.
that's out on YouTube, and that so if you're into that world, Dungeons& and Dragons fans,
Sure.
check that out.
Alright. Yeah, you mentioned villains, and I know that you, recently performed in, like, a villains cabaret at
Oh, yeah!
school. So, just before I know we only have a couple more minutes, but just do you wanna touch on, like, your singing work and
Oh,
background?
yeah. Oh, totally. So I sing, I've done musical theater in the past.
Mhm.
I love singing, and I do a bit of singing for, like, animated projects.
Yeah.
It's so fun. And, yeah, I've had the good fortune this past year of appearing in a lot of cabarets all over LA.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for a song in a minor key, and all the villain songs, are seem to be written that way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I recently performed at the Bourbon Room with this group called, Broadway at the,
Okay.
and they do concerts every couple months with different amazing singers, and
Mhm.
each month is a different theme. So,
Right.
I was really glad to be part of the villains theme.
Amazing. That's so exciting. And it makes perfect sense that you're a voiceover actor who also is a singer,
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
they both use the voice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, one final question, and this is like a bit of a heavy one, but, if you could pick what legacy you want to leave, what would that legacy be? If you know, and it's totally fine if you don't know.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think it would have to be if I can leave the world having given just a little bit of hope
Mm,
and a little bit of nurturing and a little bit of kindness and optimism to young people,
mm,
I think I'll be pretty satisfied.
yeah,
I I had a really hard childhood.
mm,
But I feel like I was saved by the warmth, love, and enthusiasm of so many older people who
mm,
really mentored me, took care of me, gave me, joy,
yeah,
whether it was in the media I consumed or, people in my life. And so if I can be that kind of adult to
mm,
young people coming up, especially young people who are, it's hard. No matter who you are, it's hard growing up.
yeah,
Adolescence is hard. So if my work can help give young people a sense of you're okay.
right,
Things are gonna be great, and you contain multitudes,
mm, yeah,
and you are seen, and you are loved, and you got this.
yeah,
If I can give a little bit of that to young people, um, that's what I think I wanna leave behind.
yeah. Well, you've already done that for me, just in
Oh!
the span of this conversation and when we work together, so I can only imagine what people who are viewing your work, and, like, letting your voice into their lives are feeling. Yeah. Thank
Aw.
you so, so, so much for taking the time out to be here. This conversation was so inspiring and so invigorating, I guess, in a way.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
glad!
I feel very enthused.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you can do it, Ishika.
Yeah.
Go get him. Go get him.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And to everyone listening, again, this is Zehra Fazal. And please remember to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And Zehra, where's the best like place to find your work for people to follow?
Oh, yeah. If you follow me, I'm on social media on Twitter or sorry, X and
Mhm.
Instagram at Zehra Fazal.
Okay.
And yeah, yeah, you can see what I'm up to there.
Awesome. And for everyone listening, thank you for being here. Also, we have our next Kissa with Ishika on November 19th with percussionist Vinay Sharma. So make sure to save the date and tune in for that. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ishika. My pleasure. Thanks everybody for watching.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.